take a pay cut for more PTO time? How many PTO days do you have?
5 weeks?
Oh, no, you say.
No, I would not take a pay cut. I mean, I'll go work at McDonald's. But.
Right. Right.
What if Paul, would you consider being the chief photographer?
No, I don't want to be the chief anywhere. That's a nightmare. I have to deal with everybody else's problems.
I'm just pulling out who I'm going to have competition with Paul retires. Okay,
Just
so
stop maintenance and
Not me.
that's okay.
Not me.
I've gone over to the bell tire every day.
That's okay.
Is Paul getting close to retiring?
Probably a year.
Yeah.
He's getting old. He's like 67.
Okay.
And his back hurts.
Well, everybody's back hurts. That's part of the job.
Yeah, your back hurts.
Your back, your shoulder, your elbows.
I'm just filling out the competition.
There isn't any.
Good.
Not for me.
Safe and secure.
Yeah, if you like meetings and dealing with people, then there you
I
go.
just want more money. And I want to be the boss. And I don't know any others. Have you heard of a female chief photographer?
Not here, but yeah, a friend of mine was chief in,
Oh,
gosh, where was she at?
I wanted to be the first, but I
Somewhere on the
guess
East
I can
Coast,
be
she
second.
was chief.
I just want to be the boss. I want a boss like how our boss is, who picks up overtime
No?
and wouldn't do anything that
No.
they wouldn't ask of their employees.
Well, if I was the boss over there, I wouldn't take any overtime. Because you're probably salary, so.
You get comp days. He takes comp days. Nobody else does. We have a lot of specials too. We should definitely celebrate with your
When is that?
September 29th,
Okay.
the Saturday.
I didn't know.
He usually makes everybody look good.
Okay.
It's really fun, and
Yeah,
it's
he
an
said-
experience.
Yeah, he told me about the,
He
he
said
said to look at the specials email and pick some that I could do.
you could easily just go do Race for the Cure and just be like a utility person.
Right, right.
Like last year, so I'm always with Dan with the microwave shop.
Is it Saturday or Sunday? 'Cause it's
Saturday.
They do like the whole team coverage thing? on
Yeah.
Saturday?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if they'll bring in like main anchors to do it, or the weekend.
I don't, last year Tiffany and Tim did it from my desk,
Okay.
and Jeff and Mel
Or in the field?
did something else, yeah.
Okay.
And then we bring in like, basically everybody who doesn't work weekends works the weekend.
I had to work weekend.
So you'll probably anchor from the, it's at 9? So you'll probably, I don't know what the heck you do.
Well, I'll be here anyways, unless they
They'll-
don't maybe.
Unless they have you do a package.
Okay,
They might have you take all of our video that we shoot
and do something?
and do like a, here's what happened
Oh,
package.
nice, okay.
Is it like a holiday thing?
No, just 5K.
So in the morning?
But we get there at like 5 in the morning to start
Okay.
setting up.
Yeah, I could do that. I have,
It's fun, I like that.
homecoming for homecoming is that day, but it's
Oh.
probably later. So I could do like the morning. Possibly.
And then the Bowling Green Parade, that's fun too, it's cold.
It's like November.
It's like November, it's cold.
I remember it happening, yeah.
It's so cold.
Yeah, Bowling Green is cool.
Well, and it's cold at 5 in the morning, so.
Right.
And then you're sitting
It's
there
just so windy.
shooting a parade.
Shooting through your hands.
You know, you go, Paul sets the heaters for some of us.
Okay.
And then, like, before Christmas is cold too, which is the day before.
Okay,
Bowling.
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Oh, wow.
And then there's the Ohio State Michigan game, but he only needs one other person for that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that on CBS?
CBS, I don't know.
What do they do for that?
We go down and do like a game before the game, like we do coverage before the game.
Oh, they send sports up there?
Yeah, it's, so it was me and Paul, and then it was Chase and Tyler, and then Noel was there, but I don't know what Noel shot, like,
In what capacity?
in what capacity, but I, so that I helped set up a live shot in the desk. I think that's all the weekend specials.
Is there anything special for Jeep Fest this weekend? I haven't heard anything.
We usually, somebody drives Defender in the parade, but
I think they, and, Kaylee, because I know Matt's out this weekend, so he was filling in.
I think that's all they do. We just send Owen Porter, a photographer, to go cover it, do a shot.
Oh, okay.
Unless you want, somebody could probably do a shoot package if you wanted to pull them together. Is Jeep Fest this weekend? I didn't know Jeep Fest was this weekend.
Yeah.
We do a lot more coverage than.
I know there's a preview tomorrow, Steve's doing a story tomorrow too, and the preview thing's on the website, but Steve's definitely, I think, package or something.
Oh crap, I didn't
So
know
are
that.
you an intern at the place, or you're one of the aliens?
I know last year I interviewed a guy who brought his Jeep over from the Netherlands.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome.
People really come from all over the world.
That could have been a really cool package. Somebody could like got his Jeep and rode around with him.
Steve's story's on the guy who rebuilt like a 1942 Jeep.
For a long time,
Oh, that's cool.
Right.
I want a Jeep, but my husband said no. He's a mechanic, so.
Oh, no,
I always wanted a Jeep
get
too,
all
but I was
the whisperings in the office, all the scoop. I'm like, this is a great place to be for something
Yeah.
where
Yeah, my husband's
someone
like, you're
else is
getting a
paying you.
Toyota
I mean,
or a Honda, because they last forever.
she's doing great. There's some other one that I got.
I'm getting my mom's for her.
Nice.
I'd say that's close to
That should be
it.
one.
Yeah.
I want a Jeep Wrangler
Yeah, oh, I always wanted,
in
yeah.
army green.
Really? Oh, army green is a good color.
Army green would be a great color.
I wanted a red for the longest time, but I've had a red car for like
Are you enjoying it so far?
5 years now, so.
My car's paid off, so.
New York or so this is nice.
Yeah, right, it's sunset.
Like, go
I bought it
somewhere
with
different.
16,000 miles on it.
Nice. Sure, yeah.
Are you from the city or from?
The city.
2016 Toyota Corolla.
There you go. Good deal.
For 14,000?
Good friends was there graduated last year.
It's becoming quite posh now at law school. I mean, every time I go.
My car keeps saying that my tires are low, and I'm like, you're lying.
Oh, your sensor?
Yeah, I think my sensor's out, I'll start to get it checked out. I'm like, "Ah, please. Please."
Oh, it's only 11 times.
Well, thank you everyone for being here this morning. Sorry for being a minute or so late getting across the street. Want to recognize George Sarantu from Toledo City Council who joins us, and all of you for being here. I appreciate taking the time on a sort of a wet, dreary day for our mid-year update. You might remember, I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we made the decision to have quarterly updates on our crime statistics, regardless of whether the numbers were good or bad, going up or down. It was just a part of transparency. We have these updates, again, when the data are in from the previous quarter. It's not associated with some event or trend. It's just whenever a quarter ends, it usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks for the numbers to get crunched, and then we update the community. But at the half year, it felt like a good time to actually supplement that data release with an actual news conference. So that's what we're doing here today. It's pretty straightforward. As we have seen really for the last several years, crime in all categories really is down significantly from last year, and very significantly down from its peak in 2021. The exception this year are homicides and person shot, but I'll put an asterisk on that as well. For whatever reason, the number of homicides we had last year tended to come toward the end of the year, in the second half of the year. So while it is true that as of a month ago, our homicides were trending just a little bit above what they were this time last year, just 30 days later, here on July 30th, we're exactly at where we were last year. So today is July 30th. There have been 20 homicides in the city of Toledo. On last July 30th, 2023, there were 20 homicides in the city of Toledo. Doesn't mean that these numbers are inaccurate. They are not, but they're just a little bit dated because these are the numbers at the end of June. And for whatever reason, again, as I say, our homicides last year were sort of a disproportionate number of them occurred toward the end of the year. So, so as of today, it's the exact same number. I would also say that while our homicide level is exactly the same today as it was this time last year, if you compare us to 2 years ago, to what the numbers were in 2022, our homicides are down 24%. So once you take that into account, that falls more into line with all of the other statistics, which show a general downward trend over the last several years. What's happening in Toledo is being seen in other cities as well. The pandemic, for whatever reason, caused a spike in crime, and in particular violent crime in 2020, 2021, 2022. And it has started as we move further away from the pandemic and some of the restrictions and frankly some of the backlog in the criminal justice system. Those numbers have started to go back in a more encouraging direction, not just in Toledo but across the country, and we see that generally in these numbers. Again, last year we saw huge percentage decreases because we were coming off our highs. So this year was going to be an interesting year because it's hard to have a percentage improvement off of what was already a lower percentage. But yet we've managed to do that. And again, just want to asterisk homicides just a little bit. Again, we're at 20 this time last year, 20 this year. So even on that score, we're kind of where we were last year, and we're sort of benchmarking ourselves, at least when it comes to violent crime, to what has been the 30-year norm. Again, we're not going to use phrases like what's expected or acceptable. That's not how we view this. But if you do look at what the 30-year average has been, now even on homicides and other violent crime metrics, we are not at what we saw even 3 or 4 years ago. We are at what the 30-year average for Toledo has been from mid-90s to today. So there, people will, I'm sure, have reactions, particularly emotional reactions, whenever crime statistics are discussed. But these sessions are just more or less for raw data. I think what we are doing is generally working. Again, we're never satisfied. We won't be satisfied until there are zeros in these columns, even as we intellectually know that's probably not something human beings can achieve, but that is the goal. But we can celebrate how much these numbers have gone down just over the last couple of years, and I think Chief Troendle, his approach, in particular to getting officers out in the neighborhoods in a sort of a community policing strategy, I think has been effective. Our efforts to grow the size of the police force have been effective. I think our Muncie office and interventions into the lives of younger people who might be inclined to otherwise make some bad choices has been helpful. Our youth programming has been helpful. Again, it's not any one thing. I think it's everything. And in my judgment, the point of today is that those numbers continue to go down, with, you know, a little asterisk around homicides and shooting incidents, which we're always mindful of, and again, won't rest until they're even lower than they are now. But even that yellow number comes with a little deeper amount of perspective when you realize that just, again, so the month of July of last year, we unfortunately saw a number of disproportionate number of homicides. So as we are at the end of the month of July, we're now right where we were last year. Significantly better than where we were 2 and 3 years ago, but not as good as we want to be, because, you know, we want it to be zero. We all do. Again, even as we know that number is probably not attainable. So that's just kind of the view from 20, 30,000 feet. I'd like to maybe turn it over to the chief just for brief remarks, open up to questions, and send you back out into the rain, I suppose. So, Chief.
All right, thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. So, as the mayor said, you know, our stats, to a certain extent, our stats are what they are, right? So, we are still continuously working hard to try to improve all of our numbers. And as the mayor had just mentioned, when I looked at our stats this morning, our homicide numbers are equal to what they were last year. And it's important to know, I mean, last year was a large reduction. We finished the year at 30% lower than the year before that. I do believe that is still attainable for us to see a reduction this year. We are trending that way. This year's kind of started in an unusual way. Our January, if you remember, we had several what we would consider double homicides, from you know, the pregnant mom to the car accident, to the domestic violence where officers end up having to you know, shoot the offender. So those kind of raised our numbers to start with, and then as we've worked through the year, we've kind of overcome that deficit to trying to get us back to an equal footing with last year. I do believe we'll continue to reduce these numbers, and a lot of that is in part to the hard work our officers are doing every single day out on the streets. The mayor mentioned our foot patrol areas. We're doing 2 areas again this year, one on the east side and one down off of kind of near Dorr Street to Bancroft, in that area down there. But we've also started something a little bit different this year as well. While our numbers weren't there personnel-wise to commit to a 3rd area, what we've done is we've picked a target area every month starting in May, and we're doing a 1-month initiative in each area, and it includes foot patrol and bike patrol, but also some suppression activities. And I am pleased on our results so far. We're seeing some huge success in those areas. Our first one was out off of Sylvania Avenue. So for the year long we studied it, or excuse me, the month long we did it, at the end of the month we looked at the data. We actually saw a 76% reduction in our tactical crimes, which are basically these and some other, a couple other ones that we track. And you know, it's not just we looked at it and said, okay, that's a huge success, but we also kind of looked at the surrounding areas, make sure we didn't kind of displace crime, and there was no large increase in the areas around there. And then we kind of looked at the city as a whole. Well, maybe it was just the city was having a good month. The city as a whole, the rest of the operations that we were doing saw a 35% reduction. So that one area where we put a lot of officers out there and actually had a, you know, a direct and impactful patrols out in that area, we saw 76% reduction. So thought, okay, maybe that's just a one-off. So our second month was over on the east side. And at the end of that time, we studied it, and we saw a 39.5% reduction in our targeted area over there, compared to a 20% for the rest of the city. So we are constantly trying to come up with new ideas through our CompStat process, through our tactical crime meetings every Friday, through other meetings with our commanders that we look at our crime on a daily/weekly basis to try to see what's happening, what trends we're seeing, and what we can do to try to impact it. So it is the officers, the detectives that are out there every single day, you know, putting their life on the line to help make our community a safer community. So those are all very positive things. Another thing we've kind of really focused on this year is curfew. Our gang unit and patrol officers on the street have done numerous curfew sweeps throughout this year. And it's something that's kind of gone by the wayside over the previous, 5-6 years because curfew just wasn't enforced. And, a lot of the officers were kind of a little bit pushed back saying, what's the point? They'll be out before we're even out and we can't keep them, they won't keep them. But the reality for me is, number one, getting them off the street could interrupt that cycle of violence. So if they're not on the street, then it's impossible for them to commit a crime or become a victim of a crime. The second thing is trying to put a little bit of onus on the parents. If we're inconveniencing the parents to get them to come down to pick up their kid, then eventually maybe, just maybe, we'll get some parents that'll pay a little bit more attention and keep their kids inside. Juvenile crime, it was a big deal last year, still continues to be a problem, so that is one of the things that we are focusing on. Obviously, we continue to try to get guns off the streets, and through our Link Toledo program, we're still pushing the integrated camera project, and our citizens registering their cameras, and we continue to have good success. This time today, we have 1,116 registered cameras. Those are 1,116 homes, which people have provided their information saying that they have cameras that were outward facing in case there's a crime that occurs in that community that they'll be willing to help us out on. And then we have 643 integrated cameras, and those are through businesses that have given us a feed to their cameras when a crime occurs in their area. And those are all outward-facing cameras. But those are all things that help us solve crimes, help us respond to crimes, and give our officers a little bit more awareness as they're responding to crimes. And it's kind of all I had to cover. So as the Mayor said, we can take some questions.
Yeah, just with some concluding thoughts. One of the things I do want to point out is that even last year, when numbers were coming down drastically from the pandemic highs, for whatever reason, auto thefts continued to be increasing. And though it might sound silly, we think there's some evidence that there was a TikTok video teaching people how to steal Kias or something along those lines. I shouldn't chuckle, but there really was some sense that was why auto thefts were going up. For what it is worth, now even auto thefts have joined these other statistics and have started to come down. Last thing I'll say is, again, we really believe in updating the community in the way we are. If we wanted to sort of game the system or game the statistics, there are ways we could have done that. Look, we understand that probably if you only have 2.5 seconds to devote to this on the news tonight or tomorrow in the paper or whatever, you're going to focus on these 2 yellow numbers. And it would have been easy for us to scribble out, take a magic marker, though you probably would have noticed if had we done this, and sort of scratched it out and just said stats as of July 30th. And then this would have been at 0, and that would have looked a lot better for us. But that wouldn't have been, fully transparent or apples to apples. So we just figure it's better to do it this way and let folks, react however they may. Even on the other one that went up, I think there's some context again, and I will, again, people can react to it however they will. We are categorizing shooting persons shot differently than we did last year. So in other words, this year's number takes in to account self-inflicted gunshot wounds as well. Last year's number doesn't, just a different way that we report it. Actually, 9 of these were self-inflicted. So had we wanted to sort of put our best face forward, we could have easily made that be 100, because in fact those were 100 individuals shot by someone else. This is 103 individuals shot by someone else, and that would have looked better. We would have had a green arrow going down. And again, this could have been 20. I think by the time we get to the end of the year, these numbers are going to continue to tell a good story. We just felt it was important to do an apples to apples end of the half-year end of June versus half-year end of June. But it is worth pointing out that even on the two categories that will probably be the focus of people who only spend 2.5 seconds focusing on your story and don't do a deeper dive, even those two categories, there's some nuance. Again, there are fewer people this year who have been shot by others than they were this time last year, and we are at the same number of homicides today as were this time last year. So people will find different ways to react to these numbers. That's fine. That's up to them. We just felt it was important to communicate the data, and I think generally speaking, what we see here is the continued improvement of our crime statistics across the board from the unfortunate COVID level spikes of 3 and 4 years ago. Again, if you look at where we were this time 2 years ago, homicides are down a little over 21%, and 2 years ago, regardless of how we categorized them, there were 146 individuals shot in the city of Toledo through halfway through 2022. And so whether it's self-inflicted or not, again, we are pretty significantly down from where we have been. So again, we wanted just to throw the stats out there. I think there's some context for some of the higher profile ones, but in general, we feel that we are moving the right direction to have a pretty good story to tell. So I'm sorry, I know you had a question.
Oh, no.
Or I thought you did. No, okay.
No, you're good. I do, but I'm sorry
Okay.
for raising so prematurely. But the chief mentioned juvenile crime.
Mhm.
Has there been an increase in juvenile crime that you've noticed?
I could be off here. I believe when it comes to juvenile homicides, the numbers are, I want to say it was 7 this time last year and 6 this year. So it is, again, that's only one measurement. So that is almost identical to what it was last year. In terms of the individuals committing the crimes, I think the percentages are roughly similar. I see where you're headed. As much as we might celebrate the general movement in the right direction, that we do continue to have too many cases where young people are involved, either as the perpetrators of crime or as the victims of crime. And so instead of standing here and saying, well, the fact is it's higher than we want it to be, and that is something that does stick out. So even as the numbers continue to come down, juvenile crime is still higher than we want it to be. I don't know if I summarized it the way if you'd agree. That's what I would say.
And with that, is the Save Our Community / Violence Interrupters program, what's the status of that? Do you feel it's working?
I do. I think it is one of the things that makes a difference. It is not the only thing. All of our efforts should be seen in the context of a menu of initiatives that maybe each one of them in and of themselves wouldn't be impactful, but when you stack them together as a whole, I do think they all add up. So that is, that's just one part of what we're doing. We're also increasing the number of police and having more foot patrols and youth programming and all the special enforcement efforts the chief talked about. But one of the things we've also layered on top of that is what we call MONSE, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. I know it is still a relatively new concept for Toledo. And in general, when anything is new, there is a period of learning and sometimes it takes a while for folks to embrace the concept. I'll continue to point out there are over 200 cities in this country that do the exact same thing. And so we're not reinventing the wheel. Part of what we're trying to do, at least on that program, is to follow what other communities have done. I can understand, I know we get sort of a disproportionate amount of questions about it, I get it. I think it's because it's still new. It still kind of feels new. People want to understand what it does and where it fits in. But that's what I'd say. I would think it is, I would worry about what these numbers would look like if we didn't have anything in our MONSE office. So I feel as though there is a comfort level in having a program based on what 203 other cities are doing as well. You might not like it, some people might not like it or understand it, criticize it. No one can say that we're way out on a limb. We're just following what so many other cities are trying to do, because this is, especially at the height of the pandemic, this was an issue that was really troubling America. I think as a nation, we're generally moving into a better direction, but there's more work to do, clearly.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Sure.
with the sort of asterisk on the person's shot number,
Mhm.
that's on there. Can you talk about sort of what went into the decision to change the counting on that?
I don't even know if I'm sure why we changed it. I just know that we're,
So, yeah, a lot of times in the past, we've been counting self-inflicted gunshots. That's a tricky number to try to track because a lot of times we know the person shot themselves pulling it out of their pants or their holster or something like that, just based on the trajectory of the bullet and stuff like that, but we may not be able to prove it that way. Also, if technically in the past, if you attempted to commit suicide and shot yourself but didn't die, that would have been counted as well. So it's just we got a better database this year, so we're just trying to clean things up and trying to make it a more true, accurate count of what's happening out there.
and again, not wanting to miss the forest for the trees, 2 years ago, the number was 146. You know, so, and again, that was 146, the way we measured back then, that was 146 people who had been shot by others. This year it's 109, and that includes self-inflicted. So, again, you're up here quibbling about examples around the margin. I think you're, kind of maybe missing the larger point. I get it. I think generally, the numbers are moving in the right direction, but I understand your point.
Did you say the 9 self-inflicted, those are accidental, or those included attempted suicide?
Those would include attempted suicides and/or accidental. Majority of them are accidental. We actually have a lot more what we believe are accidental shootings, but we just don't, unless we can prove it or somebody admits it that was accidental, we don't count it as an accidental. We continue to count that as it could be from someone else.
Anybody got anything?
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. How you feeling about liking that? Okay.
Just getting some shots in the door.
Yeah, I know, those are baked into the code, but I do think, however people feel about those things is entered into the equation.
Good morning, so I don't know who's there.
It's okay. I don't.
Try to get sorted.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just wanted some shots. Which I should have been doing before, some farting around, but.